Hey everybody, hope you enjoyed my other videos for Exodus Proxima Centauri. In this video, I'm just going to give you my actual review of the game and tell you what I thought about the game. If you want to get just a quick overview of the game, see some sample gameplay, or actually learn how to play the game, check out those separate videos in this series. Again, this is just going to be my opinion of the game. Now, before we go anywhere, I am a self-admitted 4X junkie. I love 4X style games. They're one of my favorite style of games. Matter of fact, when I was growing up, the favorite thing I loved to do was playing games such as Civilization on the PC. So it's pretty much a no-brainer that if anybody mentions a 4X game, I'm going to perk my ears up like a dog and go, ooh, 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 4X. And you pretty much got me coming into your tail because I love the style of game so much. But at the same point, I also realize that a 4X game is a huge investment. You're looking at a lot of time investment. You're looking at, based on a player count, you're usually looking at least an hour per player for a really good 4X game. Sometimes even up to an hour and a half per player, depending on how well people know the game, how many times people play the game, or just how well their strategies are going to pan out for them. I mean, I've actually seen games of Twilight of Imperium 3 go up to 7 or even 8 hours for a 6-player game, and that's with people who actually know how to play the game well. Now, granted, you can play a little bit faster, but in reality, it's not going to happen that often. So I realize that sometimes a 4X game isn't the perfect thing, and that's why I like the 3E games. And yeah, I know that term doesn't really exist yet, so I'm pretty much coining the phrase. And I'd like your support on supporting creating the term for 3E. And if you don't want to support me, at least do it for good spelling, because we know the words explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate don't begin with the letter X, they begin with the letter E. So help me support that movement. Oh well. Anyways, I appreciate the fact that these games, which are basically taking the idea of a 4X game, but you're slowly taking away certain features of the game that are going to allow the game to play quicker. So basically you have a trade-off. You're kind of sacrificing one thing just to make sure that you can get the game played in one night without having to order pizza, bring over sleeping bags, and guarantee your entire weekend's going to be tied up playing one game. So I do like the idea, but these games have to toe a very solid line for me, and I'm kind of a snob when it comes to these 4X games. I'm not afraid to admit it. It's one of the reasons why I'm a really strong proponent. And if you ever see me, sometimes I make posts on Board Game Geek, but I can get kind of vocal about this sometimes because I think that for a game to be a true 4X or even a 4X light game, a 3E game, you need to have certain things still kept in the game while still working to make sure the game still plays quickly. So that's where we have games such as Exodus Proxima Centauri. There are sacrifices that they made in the game to make the game play quicker, but they've also made these sacrifices in a way that are not so obtrusive to make you feel like you're no longer playing a 4X style game. To use another game, and I hate throwing references back and forth between games and comparing games because this isn't a showdown between games, but to use a really good example here, I like to use an example of Eclipse. Eclipse is a very well designed game. I'm not going to say it's a bad game. I am going to say it's not a game for me because while it's a empire building game, it's more of a financial empire building game. And even the fans of the game will admit that the game, while it's a mild 4X light game, it is really much a game that concentrates a lot on the engine building of building your financial engine. That's where a lot of the strength comes in. You can actually go through an entire game of Eclipse without having any battles between the players, or you can have entire games of Eclipse where you can have a very few battles, maybe 1 or 2 battles, but that's not going to judge the winner of the game. The winner of the game is the one who's going to be the person who builds their financial empire the best. And if that's the style of the game you like, that's good. It's not the style of game I like. I don't think that an empire building game should come down to whoever can balance their checkbook the best. I think a fantastic 4X light game is required to have a certain amount of things inside it, and that's why I really enjoyed Exodus Proxima Centauri. Exodus Proxima Centauri has all 4 of the X's, but they've diminished some of the X's in just a little bit, and the biggest one you can ever figure out that they removed is the X of exploration. And before I go any further, there's an expansion out on Kickstarter right now. I haven't backed the Kickstarter yet because I don't want to look like a shill, because that's one thing I never want to be with this channel is a shill. But I haven't backed the project yet, but one of the things that that expansion is going to do is it's including the Fog of War. And this is probably a bad example tile, but what it's done is it's going to allow you to have all the tiles played face down. So you're going to get some abilities to kind of scan these sectors a little bit, and I'm just very much paraphrasing what the new expansion adds. But you can scan these sectors and have a rough idea what they have, but it is going to have the Fog of War and it's going to have exploration because you're not going to know exactly how the board is built up. So they are slowly adding in some of the X's that have been coming out, and they're doing it in a way that's not going to add a lot more to the playtime. But overall, Exodus Proxima Centauri has done a fantastic job of including all the 4 X's. I get the feeling of exploration when I'm playing the game. Now, it's not total exploration. That's one of the lighter aspects of the game. But I do feel like I'm exploiting the resources that I'm going out there by attacking the resistance, which can give me resources. I'm exploring resources because these planets, and this is something I really enjoyed about the game, I'm exploring the resources because as I continue to exploit these resources, they are going to become diminished until they reach the point where there are no resources left in the game anymore, unless you do the mining action. And doing the mining action kind of handicaps you because this is a game that's only going to be played over 7 rounds. Now, unless you buy the technology that allows you to get every action, if you're playing this game over 7 rounds, that means you have 14 actions only. And I cannot impress upon you how valuable an action is in this game, that you need these actions to do things. And if you're spending your actions mining constantly, that's one less action you have available to you. That's one more action you've technically have given to your opponents that can put you behind the curveball. So there's a constant balance you have to be doing with the exploitation of your resources. So you have to play the game very smart. And I appreciate that because I feel like I'm getting that X and the 4X aspects. I'm also getting the exterminate because this game definitely rewards combat. I'm going to get victory points for blowing my opponents out of the water. I'm going to get victory points for blowing this resistance out of the water. And I feel like I have a war machine, which is something I think is highly, highly important to any 4X game. Now, you may feel like you don't like war in your games. You like more of a financial aspect to your games. And you can play a little bit lighter this game without as much direct interaction with the other players, especially thanks to the resistance. Players can play this game a little bit more gentler with each other, not attacking each other. You can actually maneuver around each other and try to win the game by having the most cubes on certain sectors of the board and simply maneuvering around each other. Yes, you can play the game that way, but the game definitely rewards an aggressive playstyle. You're going to get victory points for resistance. You're going to get victory points for attacking your opponents. And you definitely want to have your ships out there on the board because the more ships you have across the board in various sectors, the more victory points you have. So you want to be playing the game to make sure that you're blowing up your opponent's ships so they don't get those victory points. So it does offer the extermination point of the game. Now, there is no player elimination in the game, which is fantastic for a lot of good reasons. Now, player elimination sometimes in a 4X game can almost be mandatory. You take a game like Space Empires 4X, which even as a 4-player game is a long game. That's one of those ones I was talking about earlier, which can be about an hour and a half per player, especially if you start using some of the expansion stuff and use some of the scenarios. That game can go a long ways. So it's nice that the game actually offers extermination, permanent extermination in that game, because once somebody's exterminated, the game does come to an end, so it does feel good. In this game, if you manage to have all of your ships removed from the board and you have all your population removed from the board, you don't have to worry about it because you're not permanently out of the game. You can still come back into the game in your starting home sector, which is nice, and you don't feel like you're totally wiped out because you're not losing your victory points. You still have some things that you've obtained. Now, that can be a positive, that can be a negative. For a really strong 4X lover, it can feel a little bit fake or a little bit nerf-like, and I know that's the totally wrong term, but it's the only thing I think of right here. But it does feel like you can be a little more kamikaze with your units, because you know if you go out there and if your units get blown up, you don't have to worry about it because you can come back on your next round as long as you have the resources. And that is something that I liked about this game also, because now we get to talk about the weapons of mass destruction. Now, these weapons of mass destruction you have to be very careful with because you have to be playing very smart with these weapons. They can be very devastating if you're not being careful, not paying attention to them, and they can be very devastating on a lot of levels here. One of the most important ways that they can be devastating is if you blow up your opponent's population. Even though they're not totally blown out of the game, there's really no chance they can ever make a comeback because they're not going to be able to produce money they're going to need, and they're basically going to be just stuck in a game where they know they can't win unless they found a way to get a whole bunch of victory points, and they can just manage to hedge their bets and keep that lead for some long-term goals, which I guess is possible, but that does let you know that these weapons of mass destruction can be very, very important, and they can be very devastating if you're not playing smart, not watching what your opponents are doing. If you see that they're starting to go after hexes that are weapons of mass destruction, you need to make sure that you're getting more population over there so you control those weapons of mass destruction. And of course we have the final X, which is expansion, which this game does do a very good job of representing. It is very good to expand across the empire. That's actually how you're going to get a vast majority of your victory points at the end of the game, because you're going to get victory points for every one of these hex sectors that you happen to have your civilization cubes in. So you want to be spreading your empire across the board to make sure you're getting those victory points, because that is going to be helping you at the end of the game. So that X is very, very well covered. So basically what I'm saying about this game is, like all 4X-like games, it's managed to take some things and sacrifice a little bit in an effort to make the gameplay quicker. And the sacrifices in this game, and this is what you really need to decide on if this is going to be a game for you, is you need to understand that the sacrifices they made is they made it less of a tech game, less of a financial game, and more of a little bit of an aggressive game where you're going to want to play a little bit more aggressively. I don't want to say it's the polar opposite of Eclipse, but if you were to take a 4X game and split it into two branches, one branch would be Eclipse, one branch would be Exo's Proxima Centauri. And it's something I like because it's the branch of that split that I really enjoy. Now, granted, that does mean that your science and your technologies are going to be more of a means to an end versus a way to actually win the game. And of course, I'm talking about the basic game, not the expansion, because the expansion will change that quite a bit. And I think there's a political card, I just can't remember if it's in the base game or if it's in the expansion, that can also give you victory points for sciences. And again, I don't remember if it's in the expansion or not. And to be honest, every time I play this game with the expansion. And that's why during the playthrough video, I made a couple mistakes, because my brain kept on wanting to do things like grab combat cards. I kept on wanting to do things like have the resistance cards, and I kept on wanting to play the action cards for the specific empires, which kept messing with me, because I think this game plays the best with the expansion. And I don't want to get into the expansion part yet, but I definitely do want to talk about it. Just want to mention a couple more things about Exo's Proxima Centauri. Things that add a lot of variety and a lot of gameplay that I really enjoyed. I actually really enjoy the politic cards in this game. These politic cards add enough variety to the game to make sure the game is never going to play the same with the basic game, because as these laws come out, they're going to change the way you're playing the game, and they're going to change up your strategies, because there's going to cause different things to happen every single turn. And that also adds in the political aspects of the game, which is something you don't always get in a lot of these 4X-like games. You're going to get the aspects of that because you're going to have the voting, you're going to have the players spending their money to make sure that they have these political actions that they want happen. They're going to make sure those political actions are happening. And these political action cards are very important. They can definitely affect your strategies. And even the basic game has some very cool political cards that can make some huge differences. With the laws, or the ones that are just going to happen for one turn, they can change the flow of the game. And especially with the gameplay video where I made the mistake, and I do apologize about that. But the political card came up, which made it so one player can never build more than one ship on a turn. Now, if you're playing a more defensive strategy where you don't want a more aggressive player to start building a lot of ships and attacking you, that can be a good political card to vote for. So you see how that can change up the game quite a bit. And I also enjoyed how the technology tree, while it doesn't really affect your final score, it is definitely a means to the end of this game, because your technologies you buy, the order you buy those technologies in, can affect how you're playing the game. It can affect your strategies, and it can also allow you to get extra actions on your turn, especially if you buy Master Politics. Now, remember earlier I said that you're basically only getting 14 actions per turn. Okay, you're getting more than that because you're going to get the follow actions and everything like that. I'm just overgeneralizing. And you also get the bonus action, but the bonus action isn't always going to be something that you're going to want. The follow action isn't going to be something that you can always afford, because you're not going to always have the civilian cubes to pay for them. So having that third action can be very important. That can make you go from having only 14 actions a turn to going all the way to 20 actions, I'm sorry, not per turn, but for the entire game, to having 20 actions for the entire game. And that's a huge difference in a game where you're having very limited actions. So again, while the technology tree is not mandatory to win the game, it is definitely a means to the end, and that's something I really enjoyed about it. Overall, the resistance was fantastic. I enjoyed the political cards. I enjoy everything about Exo's Proxima Centauri because it hits on all the cylinders I like. I like the more aggressiveness. I like how the game plays, and I found it to be very fantastic. Now, before I close out this video, I want to do a couple comments about the expansion, because the expansion is something that adds a lot of fun to the game, and it makes this game go from a really good game to pretty much a perfect light 4X game for me, because it adds a couple things that add just perfection to this game. Now, I like how every one of these empires, these expansion empires, every one of these races are going to play differently. Every one of them is going to have their own special tech tree that's only accessible to them, and it makes them play differently. Some are going to be more aggressive. Some are going to be working on their technology tree. Some of them are going to be working with the politics and changing how the politics work. They all play differently, and they all play to their strength. Now, the nice thing is, none of them really railroad you and force you to play down one specific avenue of victory. They just are going to reward you if you play to the strengths of your empire, and I found that very nice. I also like how the expansion adds in more resistance cards, which is going to add much more variety to the game. It adds in more political cards, which is going to add much more variety to the game. And the biggest thing that I really liked about it is how it changes the actions for all the players. You are no longer having the exact same actions as another player, which goes from a game where you're basically only having 6 cards to choose from to a game where every single empire has their special strengths on exactly how they're going to play, which is going to change how you're going to look at things, and it's also going to change the importance of the Chancellor card, because some of these empires require you to make sure that you go first, to make sure that you can pick your follow action first, or some of these empires are going to have special abilities that are going to give you a bonus if you happen to be the Chancellor, such as the ability to have a huge discount only if you happen to be the Chancellor to get those special discounts. And that is something I found very awesome and something I found very fantastic and something I think is absolutely brilliant about the expansion. Finally, one other really cool thing about the XS Proxima Centauri Edge of Extinction expansion is the fact that it does add rules in for a solo player. Now, if my understanding is correct, when they actually did the Kickstarter for the Exodus Edge of Extinction expansion, I believe they included multiple scenarios for the solo gameplay, which is not present in the retail version of the expansion. You only get one solo expansion, but it does allow you to play the game as a solo game, and it actually works pretty well. Now, I'm not a huge solo gamer, so don't expect my opinion on solo games being expert opinion. Basically, the only real game I ever really enjoyed playing solo was Mage Knight. Beyond that, I'm not a huge solo gamer, but I will tell you that the solo expansion, it works. It's very playable. It's very enjoyable. It's a nice alternative way to play the game and have a lot of fun with it. It's kind of unfortunate you only get one of those scenarios in the retail version of the game, but I do believe you can buy the other scenarios directly from the website for the manufacturer of the game. If I'm wrong about that, I apologize, but that's what I do believe. I just never looked into it. And then finally, as I've already mentioned, there's already another Kickstarter for the final expansion of the game that's available on Kickstarter right now. I think that expires in about 4 days, if I'm not mistaken. So if you're interested, you can definitely head over there and check it out. I might be back in it. I haven't decided yet, but I am definitely looking into it, because that expansion is mainly more of a modular system. It's the final expansion for the game, and it adds a lot of modular expansion to the game, which is very nice because you can kind of judge the time play and make sure you add the modules that are going to add not too much to the gameplay length, but add to the gameplay variety. So I'm definitely looking into them, especially with the Fog of War for the exploration, which is something I'm actually very keenly looking forward to, plus other technologies and other things I'm going to add into the game. Something I'm definitely interested in, something I'm definitely going to consider, because there's a good chance I'm probably going to back it. I just need to look into it and see what all the expansion is going to offer, because I've only looked at a couple things by reading some of the logs over at Board Game Geek from the designers, where they talk about some of the things they've been adding into the game. Anyways, overall, I just want to say I think XS Proxima Centauri is a fantastic game. The basic game is a great game, but the expansion Edge of Extinction makes it even better. It makes it an absolutely fantastic game, thanks to the asymmetrical gameplay, thanks to how all these different factions play. I enjoy the game. It's a game that's going to stay in my collection, and it's also a game you're going to see in my top 50 list once I film the video. Speaking of which, if you want to see my top 50 video for my top 50 games of all time, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because once we get to 5,000 subscribers, I'm definitely going to film my top 50 board games of all time. If you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I'll be sure to answer them as quickly as I can. You can also feel free to email me at offtheshelfboardgamereviews. That's otsbgr@gmail.com. If you enjoy this channel, you enjoy the content, feel free to support the channel over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/OTSBGR. Your support can help bring out more content for the channel. And also click that like button and click that subscribe button. As always, thanks for watching.